Now yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Dingell.
Gentlewoman from Michigan is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on two important amendments which have been included in this en bloc. Michigan's been hit very hard by this PFAS contamination. It's in our drinking water, groundwater, rivers, lakes, and ponds. We can't eat the fish that are being caught. These harmful chemicals are found in way too many places, and they're discovering more contamination sites each day. Just today, 100 new PFAS contamination sites were identified, with many sites registering PFAS levels above 100 parts per trillion. EPA's non-enforceable health advisory is 70 parts per trillion. And the more we test, the more we find. There are two amendments here. I was proud to work with Fred Upton, Dan Kildee, and Tim Walberg on legislation that's included in this en bloc that would require the Department of Defense to enter into cooperative agreements with states to mitigate PFAS contamination resulting from their facilities. Unfortunately, firefighting foam was used at more than 100 military bases and has impacted them and their surrounding communities across the country. We need an all-hands-on-deck response to the growing PFAS contamination at military facilities. Also included is a bipartisan amendment to protect our service members from ever being exposed to harmful PFAS chemicals in MREs, known as meals ready to eat. MREs are carried by our service members in the field of operations or when engaged in training exercises. Our warfighters depend on MREs for their survival, so it's critical these food packages are completely safe. Currently, there is no prohibition on the use of PFAS chemicals in MREs, and they're in there. This bipartisan amendment would proactively correct this and simply prohibit the Defense Logistics Agency from using any food contact with substances to package the MREs. I'd like to thank Chairman Smith for including both of these amendments.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 440, printed in Part B of House Report number 116-143, offered by Mrs. Dingell of Michigan.
Pursuant to House Resolution 476, the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Dingell, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Michigan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield to myself as much time as I may need.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
I would like to first thank Chairman Smith and the House Armed Services Committee for all their good work crafting the fiscal year 2020 National Defense Authorization Act. This is a strong bill and includes many top priorities that will care for our service members and keep the United States well defended, including serious provisions to address PFAS chemical contamination, which is a serious threat at too many of our military bases. PFAS chemicals are man-made and harmful to human health and our environment. Developed in the 1940s, PFAS can be found across multiple industries and all around us in many of our communities. PFAS contamination is widespread. It's in red states, it's in blue states, in small water systems, in large ones, on military sites, and in residential communities. Recently, experts with the Environmental Working Group have identified 712 sites in 49 states that have some level of PFAS contamination, and most are not being cleaned up. These sites are associated with drinking water systems serving about 19 million people. And the number of sites is expected to grow across the country because states are just beginning to test for these chemicals. The Environmental Working Group has also identified 219 military-specific sites that have PFAS contamination because, and at the time, it's what existed, PFAS firefighting foams were used. Yet in many states, my home state of Michigan included, cleanup of these sites is not happening, and unfortunately, the military is part of that problem. They are arguing that in these communities that they don't have to clean up the PFAS contamination because the Superfund law does not require them to do so. In May 2018, the then EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt proudly announced that EPA would propose designating PFOA and PFOS as hazardous substances under the Superfund law. Under EPA Administrator Wheeler's leadership, EPA hasn't even issued a proposed rulemaking, let alone finalized an action. At this rate, it'll be at least another year, and probably longer, before this vital step is taken. Americans deserve better. Congress needs to act, and this amendment would be a meaningful step forward. It is clear PFAS chemicals are hazardous, and it's time these chemicals are properly designated as hazardous substances. Our amendment required the EPA to list PFAS chemicals, including PFOA, PFOS, Gen X, and many other harmful chemicals as hazardous substances under the EPA Superfund cleanup program within 1 year. Designating this will jumpstart the cleanup process at military facilities, which is needed, and in communities across this country. And that is why it is imperative that this amendment be included. I am proud to have offered this amendment and thank all who have supported this approach and make this possible for us to consider today. Today, we have a real opportunity to help accelerate the cleanup process wherever PFAS contamination exists and protect the health of all Americans and our servicemen and women and the environment now and for future generations. I urge all of my colleagues to support this amendment.